Welcome back to my channel because I'm crafty. My name is Caitlin, and I am so ready to show you part 2 of my Halloween costume. It is right here. So you are seeing the finished product on my dress farm. But what I have for you today is I'm going to show you some of my sewing and creative process, kind of talk through what I did, show you what it looks like on the dress farm. And then what I plan to do is kind of film a finished look after. So I actually have a Halloween party that I need to go to on the weekend before Halloween. And then, of course, we're dressing up at work on Halloween day. So hopefully I'll get something to you before then for part 3, which will be super short, just like how kind of the final look came together. But depending on how things go, I might wait until Halloween party at work. But nonetheless, I will post on Instagram, so if you're interested, you can check out there. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so if you haven't seen part 1, I definitely recommend going back and watching part 1. If you don't know, part 1 was basically my thrift haul. So to create this whole Halloween costume, I went to Value Village, did it all in one shop. Thank goodness. I don't know how I was able to be so lucky to find these pieces, but here we are. And so I show you the pieces, what they look like when I first purchased them, and kind of what my vision was for the project. Now, some of it did change as I was making it. The construction of the original pieces kind of guided me along to what was going to work best. So yeah, I'm going to get into the first few clips and let's talk about it. Okay, so first I wanted to show you guys the construction of the jacket. It's actually a pretty well-made jacket. Some of the seams on the inside have a bound edge on them. It's all serged and closed. There's some shoulder pads, and actually it's pretty well made. Like, it's not kind of half-assed put together. It's definitely a formal wear kind of outfit. I love when I open up a garment and it's made well, but it meant that I had to take it apart in a certain way, and it actually made it a lot harder. But nonetheless, what I like to do first is kind of inspect all of the inside and see what I'm working with. So I put it on the dress form inside out, and what this allows me to do is kind of put the seams where I want them to go and pin it as if I'm ready to sew. I can kind of see how much seam allowance I need, make any markers on the inside. I'm not damaging the outside of the fabric. If I did it on the outside, I'd have to turn it out and do it all over again. So this way I just kind of get it done all in one shot. So for the most part, a lot of the seams are actually super easy to alter to what I needed. So taking in the side seam under the arm was super easy. The back and the back side seams were easy. What was really difficult was the side bust, because I just had such a difference in material that I was kind of putting back together. So you'll see that in a sec. What you'll also notice about this jacket as it's turned inside out on my form is that there's no sleeves. So that was one of the first things I removed because I knew there was going to be such an issue with this area and the armhole. I knew those had to come off first. So that was the first thing I took off and got ready. But as you can see, I'm just continuing to pin, figure out what I'm going to do. The front piece where it has the zipper and the facing, I kind of just left for the very beginning moments. I wasn't sure if I wanted to overlap. I still kind of had an idea that I wanted a vest, jacket, and skirt. And so I was still trying to figure out, but what I wanted to just start off with was just try and make the top fit. Whether it was going to become a jacket or if it was going to stay and just turn into a vest, I just needed to make sure that all of the seams were fitting my shape correctly. So one of the next things I did before I sewed this is that I needed to remove the bottom piece. So it has this kind of like peplum-ish shape on the bottom, and I needed to remove that in order to sew the seams that I just pinned. So I took all of that apart afterwards, which took a really long time. I kind of joked in the first video that like, I'm gonna have a rip session and like rip all these things apart, and I was like kind of looking forward to it in the beginning, but let me tell you, it took forever. There was so much unpicking, and it's because it was so well made. It was just more than I expected. I should have known once I looked inside of it, but it did take quite a long time. So here I'm just giving you a bit of an overview of kind of what it's looking like on the dress form once I pinned all those shapes together. And then the rip session started. Like I said, it took a while. Here I'm actually ripping apart the skirt. So once I ripped that peplum part off of the jacket, I decided, you know what, let's just keep ripping. Let's just take everything apart that I think I'm going to need. So I took the waistband off of the skirt. My original idea was that I wanted to use the skirt pieces as a vest, and that really wide, like flared piece at the very bottom of the skirt was going to become the skirt that I wore. And so the top kind of pencil skirt area I felt was long enough to make two front vest pieces that overlapped and the back. So I figured, let's just take off the waistband. I might use it for the skirt anyways. So we did a lot of ripping. Next, I brought my pieces over to the sewing machine and I reconstructed all those seams in the jacket. I didn't have to touch the shoulder seams. I left those as is and pretty much touched everything else. And I also took off the facing and all of those ruffle pieces that were along the front. I didn't want to keep the zipper in the front, so I figured take it out, take the facing off. Let's just like make it as bare as possible, and so I can really see what I'm working with. I wasn't sure what kind of collar I wanted to do and all of that, so we took it all off. So I put it back in my dress form, and the problem I ran into was where I was connecting, like I said before, that side front and front panel piece. They didn't want to match the way I had originally pinned them, and so putting it back on the form allowed me to see where it naturally wanted to sit, because that front piece had a lot of ease in it, and the way I was trying to pin it so that the seams were even from, where they had been sewn originally, and just taking a big chunk of it just like made the pieces really not fit anymore. So I took it apart and then, like I said, put it on the form and kind of put it in naturally, and it worked a lot better. So once I pinned that and had a nice shape, I just had to make sure that that curve was nice and smooth. I do think I got maybe one side a little bit better than the other, but it's a Halloween costume, it's not the end of the world, but it came together pretty well after that. So next I wanted to try out how the skirt would look with how the jacket looked so far. So I'd taken that ruffle piece and I'd also pinned it along the front because I really liked that to be like a waistline, like it kind of was in the original jacket. And then I took that bottom piece of the skirt that was very flared and kind of pinned it up, and I was like, you know what, I actually really like this. I think this is the shape that I'm looking for. This is kind of the vision that I wanted. So I decided that's going to be the skirt. It also had a little ruffle piece along the top of that skirt where the pencil met the flare. So I had to unpick all of this just like I did with the jacket, which this had so much stitching in it. So I unpicked that, and then I took the original waistband from the skirt that I had unpicked earlier and applied that to the top of that flared piece. Now that flared piece was quite a bit bigger than my waist. So what I did was I put a pleat in the center front and center back, and then I also re-sewed in the zipper that was in the skirt top. So I can zip it up. There's a button at the top as well, close it, so it's totally functional. I like that I was able to add that pleat with that extra fabric. I didn't really want to remove it, so I felt like when I closed the jacket I would have like a little bit more fabric and flare in the front, and then same at the back. So once I did that, it worked really well. It was still quite a bit bigger than my waist again, so what I did was I added an elastic into the waistband. I didn't want it to be like super tight and in place. I find that those really straight waistbands like don't fit me very well. They kind of sit in the wrong spot, and I was going to be using suspenders to hold up the skirt, so I didn't mind that the waist was kind of just kind of there. It was going to be hidden under the jacket, so we put an elastic in and we're good to go. And once I had all of that done, I decided that I really liked this ruffle piece along the waistline of the top part, or the jacket or vest or whatever it was going to become at that time. So I pinned it in place, sewed it down flat. This was a bit tricky because I decided to leave in all of the seam allowance. So I had everything pressed open, so I had to like keep checking underneath and make sure everything was nice and flat. I totally could have, you know, serged off the extra material and like dealt with it. I just decided, you know what, it's a Halloween costume. I honestly just couldn't have been bothered with the additional step of doing that. Again, it is really nice when the inside of the garment is just as beautiful as the outside, and I think that's a really good kind of philosophy to have when you're sewing. But this being a Halloween costume that I knew I was going to wear once for sure, potentially twice, I just thought, you know what, we're just gonna skip that one for today. And it worked out fine. It's really not giving me any issues on the inside of the jacket. So once I did that, I put it back on the form and I decided that I really wanted those coattails in the back. And like he has kind of in the movie, in the costume, he has these coattails and they have a polka dot lining inside. So I used the top part of the skirt, which was the pencil part of the skirt, to cut out those tail shapes. So that worked really well. I was kind of playing with how I was going to attach it, whether or not it was going to go underneath this ruffle bit or just attach at the bottom hem of the jacket. Before I could even get there, I wanted to make sure that I could cut out the lining, make sure it was like a finished piece before I attached it. So I took the polka dot shirt that had those like strips and kind of mesh material. This was one of the blouses that I bought at the same time as everything else. And the shapes weren't quite big enough to cover the whole tail shape that I cut out. So then I used the chiffon blouse that I also bought at that time. It's just a plain black chiffon. And I kind of layered the pieces together so that they would fit the full yellow tail that I cut out. And again, it's going to be like hanging down, you know, behind, you know, covering my legs. I'm going to have my skirt on, so it's going to be a little bit hard to see anyways. So I didn't mind that I was piecing the shapes together, and it covered the shape for the most part. So I was totally comfortable with doing this. I basically cut out as much of the shape of the polka dot as I could. I used the sleeves, I think. Yeah, I used the sleeves, and then I ended up taking the piece that I cut off and just like sewing it to the other side to make it a bit wider. Then I cut out the chiffon piece, the same size as the yellow, and I just pinned the polka dot on top of the black and just zigzagged around the edge to kind of hold it in place. Felt like that was going to be strong enough for what I was going to be wearing it for, and I didn't need to do anything more crazy than that. Once I did that, then I was able to sew those pieces together with the yellow, inside out, turn it, top stitch, finished, and good to go and ready to apply to the jacket. So, and then at this point, since I had used the top of the skirt to cut out the tail pieces, it was kind of decided that I couldn't do a vest, jacket, and skirt, you know, kind of outfit. So what I decided was that since I had quite a bit of issue with the side front and the center front panel of the jacket, I had to cut out so much material around that armhole that I wasn't going to have a very seamless sleeve if I reapplied the sleeve back on to make a jacket. And so I thought, you know what, it's gonna stay kind of vest-like, a vest/jacket with the tails, no sleeve obviously, and I'll use the skirt to make the tails. So it totally worked out in the end, as you can see. So I did have a little bit problems with attaching the tails. On the dress form, it actually looked really good, the way I had placed them and kind of sewn them in. But once I put it on me, for some reason, it was just sitting a little bit differently and was really like pulling. I think it wasn't drafted to like fit that shape. It was just kind of a flat shape. So it really needed a dart to get rid of that pulling. But what I did was just ended up adding like a little pleat inside and moving them a little bit more to the front so that you could really see it. I think I had them too far back and you just really wouldn't have seen it in a photo. So I felt like moving it in, I could like play with it more and get kind of some more cool photos and stuff with it. So like I was mentioning earlier, I did have that problem with the armhole. I just freehand this with some chalk and I went from the front piece towards the back and just kind of drew along, trying to make it kind of a seamless curve. And then I put it on my dress form and cut one side and used the cutoffs from that side, you know, turned it the opposite way, pinned it to the other side so that I could cut it as closely as possible to be the same. This was really tricky, but I had this little ruffle detail that came off of the original jacket, and I thought this would be a great way to finish off the armhole. And so I knew that even if it was a bit off, this ruffle would really help and it would be forgiving if there was anything kind of asymmetrical happening here. And I have this blouse to wear underneath, so I felt like this was a good finishing technique for the arms. And also, may I point out, I decided to cut this while the blouse was still on the dress form. I'm so lucky I didn't cut the blouse. I guess I just had a lot of confidence in myself that day, but that is definitely something that would happen to me. But we didn't cut the blouse, so we're good. At this point, I was also starting to play with the front, so I had re-sewn on the facing. I wanted to kind of push out the points of the top to make a little bit of a collar. And the original jacket had these really big ruffle pieces sewn on to basically mimic a collar. It wasn't an actual collar, it was just kind of these extra pieces. So I decided to reuse those and sew them on to the collar. It gives it like a nice flared look. So once I had the tails, the armholes, the collar, and all that stuff sewn on, I hemmed the bottom of the jacket. I just did a really short like turn and top stitched it around. I needed to figure out how to close the jacket. So I really wanted a nice covered button on the front, and thankfully I had some in my kit. So I took some of the leftover facing piece that I had, because it already has interfacing on it. It's a pretty stiff piece. I took my covered button kit, drew out the template, cut it out, and put the button in the press, closed it. I didn't have like a hammer nearby, so I just used my scissors to like push the punch inside. But those button kits are super easy to use and they're so fun. It's just a very classic look when you have a covered button with your same fabric that you've used for your project. And they come in all different sizes. You can buy the kits pretty easily at any like Notion store. But what I also didn't want to do was to make a buttonhole. I didn't want to risk kind of wrecking that fabric in the front. It's a taffeta, and it's kind of a material that as soon as you put a needle through it, you can see the hole. And I just didn't want a chance putting in that many holes into the fabric and then have it mess up. And I just felt like it was gonna make like a weird pulling kind of shape, and when it's so shiny, that fabric can really show where things are pulling and it's not fitted correctly. And so I was trying to do my best to avoid that. So one of my tricks that I like to do instead is just put a snap underneath. Makes it super easy, and it's like easy as you're like wearing it too. So for right now, I've added 2 snaps, one right underneath the covered button and one up a little bit higher. This second one, I'm not entirely sure that I need it, so I might remove it, but for now, it seems to be working okay. So next I wanted to figure out how to do that pussycat blouse like bow that I was talking about in part 1. I don't know what else to call it, but I wanted a really kind of dramatic bow in the front. In the movie, he has just a regular kind of like men's tie. It has a lot of geometric shapes, and it's white and black. It's got polka dots and all these kind of things on it. And like as things are animated, it like gets bigger, it's smaller, it's flying off, and it's like this crazy kind of accessory as part of his outfit. And when I saw this shirt, I felt like because it was so weird, it was like mesh with these like pieces sticking out, it kind of had that feel to it. So I really wanted to use that material for the bow. As you saw in part 1, I did buy another shirt, but I just felt like it was too plain. It was too simple. It was just a plain fabric. So I really wanted to use this one. So what I ended up doing was just taking the blouse that I had left, putting the front piece over top of the back piece, and just cutting a big long strip out of it. I made the center a little bit skinnier to go around the back of the neck, and then I just used it to tie it. I didn't finish any of the edges, I just left it as is, and I think I have enough volume in the front for what I wanted, so I think it works really well. So then I was doing some finishing touches with my iron, kind of steaming it out a bit, trying to get the fabric to relax in certain places, and really trying to like envision the whole thing coming together. As you can see in this clip, I don't quite have the collar sewn on yet, so I was trying to figure out like exactly what I wanted, but it turned out really, really well. I love how the top came together. I also added a little bit of that ruffle piece that I have on the sleeve, but instead of, it's actually folded in half, so I opened it and sewed it to the back of the jacket where the tails are open, just to kind of finish that back edge. So it gives it a little bit more detail in the back with that pleat that I have in the skirt. It just looks like it's all one piece. I'm like very proud of myself for how that came together at the back, because I was a bit like, while I was doing it, I was like, how am I gonna make this look nice? But it came together really well. And I also added back in the shoulder pads that were from the original jacket. Felt like it would give it a little bit more like support in the shoulder and just kind of puff out this edge a little bit, make sure it's like nice and like, you know, I got shoulders. So they're there, gives it a little bit more body. I just tacked it with the seam allowance on the outer edge, because they do stick out a little bit underneath this ruffle, and then tucked it in at the top. So, and this is the finished look. So I have the blouse underneath, we've got the tails with the polka dot lining. I'll give you a bit more of a close-up for the back, because I think it's kind of cool. So I wanted to show you a little bit of how I'm going to accessorize this outfit. Of course, he has the hat, he has the mask that turns him into his mischievousness. So I went on Amazon and we got the yellow hat. I like this. I think it's gonna be so cool. So it actually matches super well, and it has a little like faux leather kind of strap around the middle. I might get a feather to go with it, but honestly I don't think it's like totally necessary. I am playing around with the green makeup. We'll see. I did a trial a few nights ago where I did kind of like a half green face. So it's like I was turning green. But we'll see. I have another version I'm gonna try that's not like as dramatic, but I feel like it's Halloween. I put in a lot of effort and work into this costume, and I had so much fun doing it that I feel like doing the dramatic version would be super cool. But I don't know if I want to go to work with like a fully green like face. It's a bit much, but we'll see. Maybe I'll do it for the Halloween party that I'm going to, and then work maybe I'll do a little bit toned down. But it's gonna be super cool either way. I'm excited to take photos. The other thing I thought was like, I need another accessory. Like I feel like I need the wooden mask that actually turns him into this character. And I was looking online, of course, like anything like cosplay or accessory wise is like usually pretty expensive, and I totally understand. It's like, it's a work of art and it takes a lot of work to make these things. But I was hunting, and I finally found one that was gonna work for me. So I got this one here. This one's super cool. This is like 3D printed, and then they had an option to paint it. So I got this off of Etsy, and it actually came from the UK, and it got here pretty quickly. I thought, you know what, there's no way I'm gonna get it in time, but I did, and it's super cool. So I'm just gonna kind of carry this around with me throughout the day, just to kind of have for photos and stuff. I thought if I did the half green face, it would be cool to like you know, like I'm turning green. I don't know, we're gonna have to figure out how to do it, but I thought that would be super cool. And then I have some polka dot tights, and I have some like black Oxford, kind of like a shorter style black heel. So that's gonna tie in my whole outfit. Oh, and I did my nails green, so we're gonna try and match as best we can. But yeah, that's gonna be the whole outfit. I am super excited to put everything on and actually go out and wear it and use it, go to my Halloween party and work next week. It's gonna be so much fun. So I will share those photos and stuff on Instagram. Like I said, I'll try and get those kind of part 3, the final look video out as soon as I can. But I hope you guys enjoyed coming along this journey with me and making my Halloween costume. I think it was super fun, and it was just a great project to kind of get back into video making again. It's like I come home and I'm like, oh, it's time to edit. It's time to like make a post, or like I'm thinking of new things that I can do, and it's really fun to come home and be excited about doing my little projects. And I miss it. I miss connecting with you guys and having a place to kind of share my creativity and just like document these things for myself too. I think it's really cool to look back on it. So yeah, thank you for watching. Any of you who made it to the end, I super appreciate it. Let me know down below what you're doing for Halloween this year, or if you've done a costume like this, gone crazy, or maybe you're going simple. It's totally okay, and I would love to see it. Tag me at becauseimcrafty on Instagram. I'll definitely check it out. So thank you, and have a lovely rest of your week. Bye guys.